All right, another Ask Mark question here today at Blue Glow Electronics. This one comes from Randy T in Tennessee. He says, Mark, curious, what was your first tube amplifier and do you still have it? So, really good question. And by the way, I'm way behind on these Ask Mark videos. I've got a long list of questions to get to, but we'll try to make some time over the next few weeks. On this one, I'm going to have to give you a little bit of a lawyer answer, which is it depends. It depends on if you're talking about tube amplifier period or if you're talking about tube audio amplifier. That would be the differentiating factor. Let's take a look. All right, so I cut my teeth with tube amplifiers that were not audio related for many years. I can't even remember, somewhere early 80s. And I don't have pictures of those. My first amp actually was an 807. It had 4 807s in it, and it was an HF amplifier. I've been a ham radio operator for many, many years. And but I did find these pictures of some I had. These probably go back to the maybe late 80s. This was a Heathkit Warrior here, which had, I think, 4 813s in it. You can see down here below, you would have had 2 rectifier tubes here, and then you'd have had 4 tubes running in parallel. And you're probably running like 1200 volts on the plates of these tubes down here. So you get pretty high voltage going on in these things. This one on the right I had for a while as a Henry radio. I think it was a something K4. Can't remember exactly, KW4. Anyway, it was a kilowatt amplifier, 1.5 kilowatts, and it ran 2 of these 3500Z tubes like you see down here in the bottom left, and it's gone by the wayside. I don't have pictures of some of my early RF amplifiers, but you can see what I was kind of cutting my teeth on back in the day. And you can see here, I found these pictures and scanned them in a while back. I do have some pictures from when I still lived at home with my parents of some, maybe some amplifiers I had back then that would have been probably RF based. I just can't find the pictures. If I do, I'll scan them and share them at some point. But over here on the right was a nice Fisher, I think it was a 500C. And you can see down here, this was, wow, way back in the day, I had done a restoration on this thing, which basically meant I cleaned it up and checked out all the tubes back then. And this was a nice little Dynaco setup that I had. It was a Dynaco FM3 and a PAS 3X in a wooden case with a ST70 over here on the right. And I had rebuilt that ST70 as well as both of these units. This is probably getting into the early 90s at this time frame. But let me take you over the bench and answer your real question. These were just some early examples of things I had, but I actually do have my first audio amplifier, and I thought I'd show it to you. Some of you may remember these. If you went through electrical engineering school back in the day, these were very popular in the school systems, college systems, to teach you tube amplifiers. So this is a Graymark 509 audio amplifier, and these came as a little kit, and they're pretty simple. I took the bottom cover off just so you could see in here how you wired this up, but you had a ground bus here in the middle, and you basically wired everything from the tubes to ground that needed to be, and you wired the input and a tone control. And if you'll notice, what is missing from this amplifier? You got a couple tubes here, you got a little output transformer, you've got your outputs, got your input, a volume knob, a tone knob, but something is missing. You're right, it is the power transformer. These ran with a hot chassis, and they seriesed these various, the 50C, 5, the 35W4, and the 12AV6. They seriesed all the filaments on these and ran them off of 110 line voltage. So these amplifiers never had a power transformer. They like a lot of the old record players back from the 60s and early 70s. They'd run a hot chassis, and you have to be careful working on one of these things. If you get between this amplifier and maybe some water on a concrete floor, you will definitely know it. So, but yeah, this was my first audio amplifier ever. So when I went through electrical engineering school, they were not teaching tube gear, because this would have been the late 80s, 88, 89, 90, 91 when I went through school. They were not teaching tube gear anymore at that point. So, but I was working on all this tube ham radio gear at the time. And fortunately, one of my main electrical engineering instructors that taught quite a few of the classes I was in, he was an old ham radio operator, and he still had some of the old lab stuff around from the tube days, and he actually gave me this audio amplifier. And back then I built it and got it all functional, and matter of fact, it still has the plastic here, you can see. Hasn't been pulled off the face, but fortunately he still had a spare kit that had not been built. So I built that back in the day, and it's really what I learned about audio amplification. And then I learned how audio amplification was used in ham radio transmitters to drive the typically either amplitude modulated or frequency modulated outputs, and just have learned a ton since. But yeah, this was it. I think these kits back in the day were about 20 bucks, which might have been a lot of money back then, but you know, it's been a lot of fun. It's been in a box around here forever. So I think I actually picked up a second one recently, believe it or not, off of eBay. When I got to thinking about this guy's question, I thought, I should have two of these, and one day I'll just hook them up in the shop and listen to them in stereo mode. So they're not very expensive. You can find them online pretty cheap, although most of them you find are built already these days. So that's the answer to your question. There it is. It's nothing sexy. It's bright and orange. It was designed to be used in a lab, and that's what it is. It's the Graymark 509 audio amplifier. Thanks for the question.